Okay, so for anyone who watched this video last year, you might remember that this damn program fought me so aggressively that it deleted all of my footage, not twice, but 3 times. And I had to keep going back and re-uploading the images and dragging them to their spots 3 times, 3 separate times. So we have a little bit of beef. I'm clearly still not over it a year later. So let's hope that it decides to cooperate and be nice this year. Hey guys, and welcome back to another one. I still am in a significant amount of shock that we are in 2025 and that we were here exactly 1 year ago today almost doing this exact same video. That is crazy. And like I said, hopefully it's nicer to me than it was last year. But we are going to be tier ranking all 90 books that I read in the year of 2024. I am so excited to do this. But first, let's talk briefly about the tiers that I have so that you'll understand kind of how my rating system is going to work. Okay, up at the top, we have Nothing Will Beat These. These were my 5, 6, 7-star Infinity Star books that honestly were the top reads of the year. I suspect that not very many of these books will end up in this category because these are the ones that just nothing will beat, not only in the year of 2024, but like the overarching theme of my reading. Right below it, we have, these were great. These were amazing books, probably like, 4 to 4.75 star books. These were awesome. These were great. I would certainly recommend them. They just didn't kind of give me that 5-star Infinity Star feeling. Anyone who's a reader knows that 5-star is a feeling and you just kind of get it. So these were books that were amazing. Some of my top reads of the year, but just didn't quite click over into that 5-star feeling. Then we have Perfectly Average. I have a weird feeling that these are going to be where most of the books are going to sit because they are exactly as it implies. They were fine. They were great. This is going to be between like 3 and 4-star reads. These are going to be the ones that there was nothing really necessarily bad with them, just something didn't jump out as anything that blew my mind. The next category down is meh. Wouldn't recommend, right? Like, these were perfectly average as well, except the difference between perfectly average and meh is that I wouldn't recommend them. That there are better books, that it's not necessarily that anything was bad with them, but there are millions of books to read and I just wouldn't necessarily point you in this direction. And I also want to give a caveat with this that recommendations with books are subjective, okay? So I am saying if you just came to me and asked me like, is this a book you would recommend? Just giving you a very basic yes or no answer. Obviously, if you're asking me for specifics, then I might recommend them because you're asking me for specifics. If you came up to me and said, I specifically want to read a book about sharks, then I'll recommend Jaws. But if you came up to me and said, hey, just recommend me a book, Jaws might not be the first book that pops to mind. So I just want to make that caveat that necessarily I'm just saying, like a blanket statement that I generally wouldn't recommend these. Not necessarily that there wouldn't be a very nuanced approach where I might recommend them, even though they weren't necessarily for me. And then last but not least, we have No Thank You. These are books that are just no thank you. All done. Don't want to talk about them anymore. No thank you. If you have nothing nice to say, just say nothing at all. And all I'm going to say is no thank you. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump right in. The first book that's being suggested is Daughter of Smoke and Bone. So I am currently in the middle of a Laini Taylor read along with a bunch of my girlies, and we are reading her entire works. So I'm going to be completely honest with you. Daughter of Smoke and Bone is the first book in the Smoke and Bone trilogy, and it was my highest rated. The series kind of tanked for me after this one. So I wouldn't go so far as to say this was great. I'm going to go ahead and say this was average. It was fine. I don't think it was great, but it was good. It's YA, so I kind of deduct a little bit of points. I'm just really, truly solidifying the fact that I'm kind of over YA, to be completely honest with you, so it was fine. Okay, next let's go into Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I actually really liked this, but I do kind of echo that I understand why some people wouldn't like the main male character. Did it blow my socks off? Was it one of my favorite romances of the year? No. I've heard the series gets better. I haven't continued. Would I recommend it? with all the other romances? I think I would. I think I would because I really liked the writing and it had like a good morally gray vibe. So I think I would recommend it. I don't think I would tell people not to read it. So we're going to put that one in perfectly average as well. Okay. Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I am in the minority of people, I feel, that actually preferred Ruthless Vows to the first book, Divine Rivals. I really felt like the series, the Letters of Enchantment series, found its footing in Ruthless Vows, and I absolutely loved it. This is going and these were great. I don't think it's going to stick with me long term as something that changed my life, but Ruthless Vows was a great book. You have to know what you're getting into. It is cozy. It is, you know, it has high stakes, but it's not something that's going to keep you at the edge of your seat, but it's a great book and the writing is beautiful. So I'm sticking by that one. The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. Okay, first of all, we know my opinions on mystery thrillers, not my favorite genre, so it's never going to rate super, super high. And this one was slow and predictable, but it wasn't awful. This is going to go in meh. I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, like it was a good book. It was fine. There was nothing like super wrong with it. But if you were to say to me, recommend me a mystery thriller, I would point you more in the direction of like The Last Word by Taylor Adams. I don't think that the first one that popped to mind would be The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. So yeah. Okay, next up, The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. Okay, I appreciate the genius that Mark Lawrence's mind seems to be. He is very talented, and I would assume that if one were in a room having a coffee with him or talking to him, I think he is profound and I'm sure very smart. However, this book bored my absolute socks off. I was so bored throughout this entire book. I kind of want to put a meh, wouldn't recommend, because I appreciate the quality of the writing. But I'm going to put it in no thank you. No thank you. The more I think about this book, the more all I think about is how bored I am. And yeah, if you were to come to me and say, hey, what did you think about The Book That Wouldn't Burn? I would say like, I am good. I'm not going to continue on with the series. I think it's a no thank you. I'm kind of already like second guessing that. Maybe I would put it in meh, that wouldn't recommend, but I you know what? I'm going to keep it in no thank you. I'm going to keep it in no thank you. Okay. Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This book, when I said before that Ruthless Vows didn't blow my socks off, it wasn't anything that I was like, it will stick with me. This is the difference. This is going and nothing will beat this. This was one of my favorite books of the year, and you could not shock me more that I loved this as much as I did, because this is a straight literary fiction. I can't believe I loved it as much as I did. This book was incredible. It was heartfelt. The writing was gorgeous. Marcellus the octopus, one of the point of views is from an octopus's point of view in the aquarium that our main female character works in, and it was truly, it tugged at your heart. It was amazing. It was beautifully written. You want to cry for these characters. You were so emotionally invested in them. This is a book that nothing will beat. This was a true 5-star feeling book. That's an easy decision. The Nanny by Lana Ferguson. Okay, spicy, smutty, fine. Was not great. A little cringy. Incorporates social media, which is a little like not my deal. This is an OnlyFans model. Would I recommend it? It was average, but would I recommend it? It's going to go in one of these categories. I don't think I would. I think if you asked me for a spicy rom-com, this wouldn't be something that I would jump immediately to. Maybe in a very specific instance, but I don't think I'd jump straight to The Nanny. So I think I'm going to put it in meh, wouldn't recommend. She Started It. Okay, this was a little bit more suspenseful for me than The Wife Upstairs, but I still wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but the concept was cool. I think I'm also going to put that in meh, wouldn't recommend. Once again, I think it was average, but nothing that I would recommend. And I think you're going to find a theme that like most mystery thrillers are probably going to end up in this category just because it's not my favorite book. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend that one. Okay. Behind the Net. I think this book rated highly on Goodreads for me, but I honestly think it was a situation of like right book, right time. Like I was very much in the mood for a spicy sports romance when I read this, so I think it did benefit from that. It wasn't average. I think I'm gonna put Behind the Net, and this was great. It was great. It was better than average, and if you did say to me, like, give me a sports romance, Behind the Net would pop to my mind as one of the books I would think about. So it was great. I'm confident with that. Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. Okay. Interesting concept, was trying to do way too much. This book was a patchwork quilt of tropes. I'm gonna go say no thank you. I think overwhelmingly I didn't really care for it. I wouldn't recommend it. I think it was below average. Yeah, no thank you. Let's do Bride. Let's do Bride by Allie Hazelwood. This was my first Allie Hazelwood, and it was Allie Hazelwood's first romantasy. This was like Twilight vibes to the max, but like spicy Twilight, and I really liked it. And the part, if you know anything about this, there's a little bit of like a Omegaverse anatomy lesson. I'm not going to say anything more than that. Like, I would suggest you don't Google it. Don't do it. But there's a little bit of an Omegaverse anatomy lesson that I think it shocked a lot of people when they hadn't read many werewolf stories, but I knew about it already. I had read a little bit of Omegaverse, so it didn't like shock me the way that it shocked a lot of people. I kind of did know. I saw it coming, pun intended. So I knew about it. It didn't surprise me. I'm gonna go ahead and say this was great. I really, really liked it. I know that once again, I think I'm in the minority there, but I really liked this book. There was nothing wrong with it. It was just campy Omegaverse. So I liked it. Heartless by Elsie Silver. Is Heartless the one? I think Heartless was the one with Jasper, correct? If that's the case, this was not my favorite. I'm going to put it in perfectly average for a second while I double check, because I've gotten a little confused about the order of this book. If Heartless was the one with Jasper and Throne, I might knock it down. Hold on one second. Heartless, Elsie Silver. Working as a nanny. No, okay, so this is Cade and Willow, I believe. Is this Cade and Willow? I think so. Okay, no. I liked this one. Was it great? Was it great? A little bit of an age gap romance. I found Cade to be a little too possessive and a little too grumbly sometimes, but I think it was a little better than average. I'm going to put it in this was great. It's somewhere hovering on the line of this was great and perfectly average, but I think overwhelmingly I really enjoyed my time reading this book, so I'm cool with that. Okay. Shatter Me. Shatter Me by Tara Mafi. This is going in perfectly average. Now, I think this might have suffered a little bit from like first book syndrome, where she was just trying to find her footing in the series, because I read the second one as well, which was Ignite Me, and I really liked it much better. I think her style hadn't been quite developed in this one yet. It was very YA, but I enjoyed myself, and I would recommend it to the right person. And I also would recommend it like as far as read the first one so you could move on with the series, a la like ACOTAR, like get through the first one so that you could enjoy the rest of the series, because the writing gets better. So yeah. Okay, Swamp Story by Dave Barry. Interesting, strange, purposely campy, funny, quirky, purposefully literary fiction about your typical like Florida man craziness. It was average, but I probably wouldn't find myself in a situation where this book would like jump to mind as something I would recommend. So I think I would put it in meh, wouldn't recommend it, but it was fine. It was okay. Similarly, Fathom Folk by Eliza Chan. Interesting, enjoyed my time. It was a slog to get through. It was very slow, very repetitive. I think there was so much potential in this story. It just bored me. So I'm gonna put it in meh, wouldn't recommend. It was average. It was fine. It didn't blow my socks off, and it didn't also like really turn me off. So I'm confident with that. The Firekeeper's Daughter. Okay, this was one that I was very conflicted about, because let me tell you something, the concept of the story and the quality of the writing, great. great. But there were some parts of this book and the theming and the writing that just wasn't intended for me. Like, I'm not the audience for this book. However, I was able to look past it because I really enjoyed the story and the mystery and the writing and a lot of the elements of the book. It was above average. Nothing will beat that. I'm going to put it in these were great because I did really enjoy my time. However, if you're interested into my full thoughts, put it in the comments down below and I can send you the link for the video that I discussed because I went a little bit more into depth about what I was talking about. It wasn't 5 stars. It was somewhere in the 4.25 star arena. It was very good, just not necessarily intended for me. Oh my goodness. Beach Read by Emily Henry. The easiest, nothing will beat this. I think this was my top read of the year. It was my first Emily Henry and I felt all the feelings when I was reading this book. I closed this book on my chest and I looked at the camera and I said, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get Emily Henry. I get the hype. This book was incredible. It was amazing. Nothing will beat this. It might be my top read of the year. I think it is my top read of the year. So good. Okay, Falling by TJ Newman. Neither blew my socks off. Falling was a little bit better. I'm gonna put this in meh. It was fine, but I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. It didn't really get my heart pumping. It did a little bit more than the other one, but yeah, it's just not for me. Very cool aeronautical, like, thriller series, but it's really not that thrilling. So I don't think I would find myself in a place where I would recommend that. Okay, Destroy Me. This is a novella in the Shatter Me series. It's a novella. I rate these a little differently. My expectations for novellas are not as high. I think I'm going to put this right next to Shatter Me, and it was average. It was fine. Get through it to move on. But it was good. It was fine. I don't really have much to say about it. It was average. It was fine. It was a novella. Okay, Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. It goes confidently and no thank you. I absolutely disliked this book. I did not like this book. I actively hated the main female character, Stevie. She was a spoiled, rotten, snotty, entitled little brat that treated her parents with so much disrespect. I just had no use for her. I didn't connect to her as a character. I thought the story was kind of stupid. The academic, environment, the academic setting was cool, but it was definitely not redeeming the rest of the story, so that was a no thank you from me. Moving on. I'm done talking about that. Okay, None Shall Sleep by Ellie Marney. This is going in perfectly average. It was fine. It was very cute. It's very similar to like the Naturals type of idea where like these kids are recruited to help solve like serial killer stories and stuff like that. It was very good. The writing was solid. It was a little bit longer than it needed to be, but I liked the characters. It was perfectly average. It was fine. There is situations where I would find myself recommending it. So yeah, it was perfectly average. Okay, Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. We read this as one of our homey and homely books, and I really enjoyed myself. Did it blow my socks off? No. I don't remember what I gave it. Did I give it a 4 or did I give it a 3.5? Thinking back on it, it was average and I would recommend it. It was very cute, cute little rom-com Wedding Crashers vibe. I liked it. It was average. I think most of the books are going to be in these two categories, but okay. The Revenant Games. YA, very cool concept. Vampires and witches are putting humans into deadly trials to earn a benefit. I thought the concept was really cool and I would recommend it, but it wasn't great. Perfectly average. I would recommend this book. It's cute. It's good. Read the synopsis. A little confusing, but good. It's not confusing when you're reading it. Oh, this one's tough too. I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Okay. This is the nonfiction about the EAR and Golden State Killer that was written by Patton Oswalt's late wife before she passed away from cancer. This is why I'm conflicted about this. I am so enamored and in awe of the amount of research and dedication that she put into this book. It is mind-blowingly tragic that she passed away before she finished her research and finished this book, but interwoven in the book. Her family and friends kind of inserted their thoughts, which I liked. However, it was almost like so much information that a lot of it came across as very textbooky. Like, I didn't feel like I was reading this for an enjoyment. I felt like I was reading this almost like I was studying for a case as a lawyer or studying for a criminal justice class. I think it just went above my head a little bit. And that's probably a me problem, not a her problem. So I'm going to put this in I wouldn't recommend. It was just not something that really thrilled me enough to want my friends and family to read it. So okay, Powerless. This is Jasper. Oh, I see the hockey skate. So yeah, this is Jasper and Sloane. Jasper, the main male character in the book, is a hockey star. So, yeah, this one, I didn't like the couple very much, but I still love the Chestnut Spring series, and I still love Elsie Silver's writing. I honestly am probably going to put this in meh, wouldn't recommend. Now, that's not reflective of the entire series. I recommend the entire series so far. I really like it. This particular book, if you asked me, like, I want to read the Chestnut Spring series, but like, what's one to skip? So far, I would skip this one. If you had to skip one, yeah, just didn't connect with the characters very much. Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. Mafia romance, easy to understand writing. Really enjoyed this. It was above average for me. I'm putting it in this was great. I really liked it. I don't read a ton of mafia romance, so it might have been that as well, that it was just like what I needed at that time. And it was like a palate cleanser for me. It was different and I liked it, but the writing was so easy and I really liked the characters and the story was great. So yeah, it's great. I like that one. Okay, you know what? We're not going to do this one yet. We're going to wait. Okay. Does It Hurt? Okay, this is very dark romance. Once again, not some like genre that I'm very experienced in, but this was like very deranged. However, it incorporated sharks, so I loved that. It didn't incorporate them enough. I wish there was more. I enjoyed my time reading it, but yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm going to put it in average. I don't think when I'm looking at the books that I currently have sitting in my These Were Great category that I would confidently say with my chest that Does It Hurt compares to those or stands on the same level. So yeah, wasn't my favorite, but it was good. It was fine. Okay, Spin the Dawn. YA, very cute writing, very cute story. I am going to continue on with the series. It was not great. It's between one of these. The question becomes, would I recommend it? You know, I think I would, because there's not a ton of YA fantasy that's not heavily romantic that I would like necessarily find myself falling in love with. I didn't fall in love with this, but it was good and I did enjoy my time. So I think I would recommend this in the right situation. So it was perfectly average. It was good. Okay, another book I read with Homie and Homely was The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Judson. And honestly, was it great? Was it great? I think it was. I'm going to go ahead and put this in This Was Great. I really enjoyed this. I think the strongest part of this series is the world. There is a really cool world system in this book, very cool political system in this book. I liked the romance. I dug our characters. Bridge Kingdom surprised me with how much I liked it, and I do want to move on with The Traitor Queen, the second book, so I think this was great. I liked it more than average, so. Okay, Opposites Attract. Yeah, this is easy. It's going in meh, wouldn't recommend. It's a rom-com. It was nothing great. I kind of found it a little cringy, very cringy. So I would probably put it in wouldn't recommend. It just wasn't my favorite thing in the world. So yeah. Okay, Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This was great. I still loved it. I still gave it like over a 4.5, I believe, but it did not compare to Beach Read. Beach Read still beat it. So it was great. It was fantastic, but it's nothing that like blew my socks off to the point where I'll remember. I mean, I will remember it forever. Am I talking myself out of my... No, I'm not. It wasn't as good as Beach Read. Beach Read is still top tier for me. So it was great. Very good. You have to read Emily Henry. She's a classic. Okay. The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I am so shocked that so many booktubers I watch are like singing this book's praises. I liked the concept. The relationship between the teacher and this little boy's student's incredibly creepy and weird. I don't know how that made it through editing with no one saying like, this is weird. Like, no teacher should be talking to the little boy like this. I think this teacher really overstepped her professional boundaries and potentially to a detrimental level to this child. So I didn't love that. And it really, like, I couldn't get past it for most of the book. I'm going to put it in meh, wouldn't recommend. I just think the concept is cool. The writing was decent, but there's just certain parts of the book that I just wouldn't recommend it. One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I really liked this, and hands down, easily the coolest, most unique magic system of any book I read this year. This was great. This was great. I'm excited to read Two Twisted Crowns. It did get a little slow at parts, but I loved the concept of the nightmare monster being in her head and the cards as the magic system. I loved that whole plot. So yeah, it was really good. Okay. Powerful. This is the novella after Powerless and before Reckless. And I, similarly to Ruthless Vows, am in the minority where I think I actually liked this better than Powerless. I saw such an improvement in the writing between Powerless and Powerful for Lauren Roberts. Was it great? I still don't think it's like on the same tier as Book Lovers and Ruthless Vows and One Dark Window. So I'm going to put this in average, but it's a very strong average. I would recommend it. I really like it. It's a very strong upper end average. Another one of those books that's like teetering between average and great. So, but if it doesn't like tick over, I can't put it with the other books. Secret Book of Flora Lee. Okay. Now this gets difficult. Historical fiction vibes, very cool concept, a little bit of mystery in there as well. Beautiful writing. I loved the historical elements. I'm putting this in This Was Great. It was really good, and I think it was a departure for me, like stylistically and genre-wise. So I think this is what opened my mind to the fact that I might like historical fiction more than I thought. Yeah, it was great. I really liked it. Okay. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. I don't know if any of you watched the video that I read this in, but this book infuriated me. I hated the main female character. She was just miserable. Everyone in this book was just a pit of misery and honestly just spewed venom and hatred, and I did not like it. Once again, another classic example of this book was not written for me, was not written for people like me in mind. This is no thank you. I did not care for this book. Sorry. No, didn't like it. But Bonnie Garmis's writing was great. She was a very good writer. Okay. Next up, Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. Another sports hockey romance that I really did love. I felt that the writing wasn't fabulous. It was a little immature. It was a little undeveloped. I think it could have used another round of editing, but for a spicy college hockey romance, it was fine. So perfectly average. I liked it. It was fine. Okay, we got to move this down a little bit. Okay. Next up, what do we go to next? Let's do, okay. Let's do A Fragile Enchantment. Okay, this book was not good. This book was boring. I honestly don't know how this book was published, to be completely honest with you. There were typos everywhere. There was poor grammar everywhere. It was boring. The characters had zero connection, yet we were supposed to think they were in love. And the thing that really upset me the most about this book is, once again, the concept had so much potential. When you read the inside cover for this book, you're going to be like, this sounds amazing. And it's not. It's not amazing. It just has a really good concept that was poorly executed. This one for me, unfortunately, is going into no thank you. Did not care for it. Yeah, not for me. Okay. Nora Goes Off Script, on the other hand. I really enjoyed my time with this. Was it great? I don't think it was great. I think it was average. One of the things that bothered me is probably very niche to me. I am a mom. I have 2 boys. And in this book, one of the elements is she leaves her 8-year-old daughter to be babysit by a movie star man that's filming a movie at her house on day 3. On day 3, she decides she has to run an errand. She knows nothing about this man other than he's a drunk. He's a literal alcoholic that's living in her backyard to film a movie. He's an irresponsible movie star. That's all we know about him, who drinks too much. And she has to run an errand and leaves her 8-year-old with him. After that, I was just kind of like, this book makes no sense. So there were elements of this book that just didn't make sense, but it was cute. It was fine. If you can get past those silly little things that make no sense, in my opinion, you'll enjoy yourself. And it's very short. So I understand that things had to wrap up quickly. So it's just, yeah, it was just kind of a weird element, guys. Okay. Heartless by Marissa Myers. Okay. I did like this. However, this book did what a lot of fairy tale retellings do that kind of irritate me, where it did bring in some unique elements, but not enough to make the story inherently like groundbreaking or interesting. I mean, it was cool and the writing was great and I would recommend it to the right person. It's definitely cozy. I'm going to put this in perfectly average as well because the writing was great. And I think for the right person, I would find a way that I could recommend it. So it was average. It was fine. Okay, same with Caraval. I did really enjoy my time with Caraval. However, it was slow. I felt that a lot of the ideas weren't developed very well. However, once again, like I was saying before, this I think screams first book syndrome. And I can see if the ideas and the style is developed more moving forward in Legendary and Finale, that it would get better. So I'm going to put this in perfectly average as well. I would recommend it to get through it to get to the next books. So I'm confident with that. Okay, let's do The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is what I read as my first book in my Throne of Glass journey. I read The Assassin's Blade first. I do at this point think that I would probably recommend it. I'm not like super far into the series, so I don't want to like speak with any authority, but I did enjoy my experience reading it first. So I really liked this. Once again, I actually enjoyed this more than Throne of Glass itself. Was it great? This is another book similar to Powerful that's teetering on the line between great and average, but if I can't say it fully, I feel like it's more leaning towards average. So I'm going to put Assassin's Blade and this was average. And while I'm here, let me grab Throne of Glass and also put that in this was average. I can see how the story is going to get better. And I want to say, I believe Sarah J. Maas wrote Throne of Glass when she was 17 years old. So that in and of itself is incredible. So I'm not trying to shade her at all. That's amazing. And I did give this some like flexibility for being something she wrote when she was so young. However, I would say The Assassin's Blade is teetering on the line of great and average, and Throne of Glass is like middle to lower average to me. However, I would recommend both of these so that you could continue on with the series, because I have heard that Throne of Glass only gets better as it goes on. And similarly, I felt that way with ACOTAR. Like I said before, ACOTAR, the first book, didn't really do anything for me, but the rest of the series was a 5-star series for me. So fight your way through it. I can see how this would get better. Yeah, moving on. Oh. Gothicana by Runix. One of my favorite books of the year. I am putting this in Nothing Will Beat These. I think about this book all the time. One of the greatest dark academia settings. I surprisingly ate up the teacher-student vibe. I really liked it. It's university, guys. Don't make it weird, okay? The university teacher-student. He was like a student teacher's assistant, like upper college aged kid. It wasn't like super weird or age gap. It was done in the right way that I really enjoyed it. I thought the spice was great. I thought the story was great. I thought the mystery was great. I really liked it. I ate this book up. Nothing will beat it. One of my favorite books of the year. Okay. Mile High by Liz Tomford. This is the first book in the Windy City series, and it is most people's least favorite because most people complain that the main male character is not good. I didn't mind him. I didn't find him, I think he is slightly chauvinistic, but a lot of people are more offended about that stuff than I am. That doesn't really ruffle my feathers at all. Like, I'm good. You know, your opinion of me doesn't really matter. That stuff doesn't really bother me that much. And they were like, oh, well, he talks about her appearance too much. It's like, yeah, but she talks about his just as much, guys. Okay. They're both kind of have that bantery, critical, like, you poke me, I'll poke you kind of relationship. I thought it was average. I would recommend it. I could see how the rest of the books in the series would be better. But yeah, it was average. It was fine. Okay. Aragon by Christopher Paolini. Another book we read with Homie and Homie this year. I'm putting in this was average. It was great. I'm sure I should say it wasn't great. It was good. It was upper good. It's probably sitting with Assassin's Blade and Powerful. It was very good. I am going to continue with the series. It is middle grade. So just keep that in mind when you read it. I did think this was a bit too long. However, Saphira, his dragon, took my heart. So Saphira gets bonus points. So, okay. Oh. Guild by Raven Kennedy. I think if you've watched this channel, you know this is going confidently into Nothing Will Beat This. Oh my God. The Plated Prisoner series is one of my favorite discoveries that I made in 2024. The Plated Prisoner series is going to be 5 stars. I love this. If you want to get into really good, really well-read romantasy that has something for everyone, get into the Plated Prisoner series. King Midas retelling, gold-touched female main character, court politics, adventure, fairies, pirates, just so good. So good. Nothing Will Beat Guild. Once again, one of the top books of the year. The Third Gilmore Girl. Okay, nonfiction. Really enjoyed it. This is Emily Gilmore from Gilmore Girls, the lady who plays her. I learned so much about her life. I don't think I had enough respect for all of the things that Kelly Bishop has been a part of. I loved her voice. I listened to it on audio, and she, of course, narrated her own. I'm putting this in This Was Great. I really liked this book. It was very, very good. I didn't agree with everything that she said during it. Our views on some things aren't the same, but she said it in such a classy, great way that I feel like, once again, she and I could sit down and have a coffee and it would be an amazing, life-changing experience. I really liked this book. So yeah, it was great. Daisy Hates. Okay. This is the second book in the Magnolia Parks universe. I am, once again, loving this series. I have not decided whether I'm a Magnolia girl or a Daisy girl. I'm thinking I might be more of a Magnolia girl. Daisy is a little too witchy to me. She's a little too abrasive to me. This was great. This series is amazing. I really like this series. Toxic, rich people drama, Gossip Girl in London. It is just really trashy, fun, good times, and I love it. But in the most lyrically written way possible, with quotes that will just like stick to your soul and stay with you. This series is probably the closest. I'm not an annotator. I don't like annotating. I don't want to write in my books. I don't want to annotate. It's too much work. I zone out when I'm reading. I don't want to feel like I'm in class taking notes. However, if there was a series that I've come close to wanting to annotate, I didn't want to, but close to, it would be the Magnolia Parks universe. Next up, let's do From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I see the criticisms of this book in that it's very repetitive, it's very slow, and a lot of this book could have been edited down as well, but I really enjoyed the story. I think I'm going to put this in perfectly average. I don't think it teetered over into great for me. The story was good. I just wish that they had condensed it a bit so that there weren't so many parts that were such a slog to get through. So for me, it was average, but I would recommend it, and I want to move forward in the series. Iron Flame. The second book after Fourth Wing. This is going, and nothing will beat this. I don't want to hear the criticism of this book that people were giving it. It was unfair. It was undue. And I think, honestly, people were just chomping at the bit when this book released to criticize this book to be different, honestly, because there was nothing wrong with this book. And people scared me away from reading it because I loved Fourth Wing so much that I just didn't want Fourth Wing to be sullied for me in any way. And after reading this book, I closed it and was like, what were people talking about? Like, what were people talking about? It was incredible, and I'm so excited for Onyx Storm. This was the most unfair criticism, I think, of any book in 2024. It was great, and it will be very hard to beat this book. I'm hoping Onyx Storm does. Okay, Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This was one of my last books of the year, and I did really enjoy it. It was not great. I'm putting this in perfectly average. I would recommend it, and V.E. Schwab is obviously a masterful writer. However, I can't describe it. It didn't blow my socks off. I had trouble connecting with the characters. There were too many characters, in my opinion. I don't know if that will be incorporated into Vengeful, but I just feel like there was a lot going on that sometimes wasn't necessary, but it was very good. It wasn't great to me. Belladonna. Okay. This book is an example of so many people really loved it and were like giving this 5 stars. I can't imagine a world where this would be 5 stars. I really can't. The writing was decent. The writing was fine. But our main female character was kind of insufferable, and it was very YA. I did like our love interest. And I thought the concept was interesting. I'm just saying this was perfectly average because in a specific instance, I would probably recommend this, but it wasn't anything that like could be great. You know what I'm saying? It was fine, but I did kind of leave it being like, this is what everyone was freaking out about. Like, can't relate. I didn't really freak out about it, but I will continue. I do want to read Foxglove, so we will see. Okay, let's just rip this Band-Aid off because this is the book, hands down, that makes me feel the worst about my opinion. Deadly Occupant by Mads Rafferty. Adore her, love her, adorable, watch her videos, think she's great, but this book was not good. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, but I will not compromise my honesty. If she were my best friend, I would tell her this needed to be rewritten. This felt like a high school sophomore English project. I did not care for it. I thought the writing was pretty bad. I feel so bad saying that. I feel so horrible, and I adore her, but I don't want to lie to you guys, and I don't want to stifle my true opinion trying to be like that booktuber. I just don't want to do it. I want to be honest. I think my integrity means something, and this book is not good. Okay, we had a slight dinner intermission, but we are back and ready to continue. Okay. Which should we go in with next? Let's go in with It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. Okay, this book gets a lot of hate, once again, similar to Iron Flame, for no particular reason. I don't understand why. The criticism I've seen from some people is that people say that it glorifies DV and things like that. I could not disagree more. I've read the book, I've seen the movie, and I think they did a great job with the way they handled it, and I think it just correctly depicted the sometimes silly, illogical, irrational decisions that people make in irrational, illogical positions that they're put in. I'm going to go ahead and say this was great. I think it was above average. I liked the way it was handled. I did not have a problem with the book at all. So you can feel free to disagree. Drop a comment down below if you do. I would love to hear your take, but I really liked it. And I feel like at some point in our lives, we've all had a friend, maybe not even, God forbid, to this extent, but we've all had a friend in our lives who is in a bad situation that we disagree with, and they've made decisions where we're sitting there kind of not judging them, but kind of being like, why would they do that? Why would they say that? And it's not always logical. And I feel like it was very realistic. So that's my take on it. Okay. Kingdom of the Wicked. I liked this. However, I feel like I'm a broken record. This was YA again. It was a YA fantasy. I feel like I'm getting just a bit old for a YA fantasy. And this was a bit like the characters were very dramatic. Everything was very over the top. The writing was decent, but once again, it's the first book in a series, and I'm hearing that the rest of the series is written a bit differently. I'm going to put this in perfectly average. I would recommend it to the right person. I don't think it's the greatest thing ever written, but I would recommend it, and I'm going to continue on the series. So that's what we'll do. Okay. Heavenly Bodies by Amane Arayu. This goes directly to Nothing Will Beat This. This was one of my like 4.75 star reads. I loved this book. I thought it was beautifully written. Now, in fairness, I did read it indie published. I have the ARC copy as well as the regular published edition of the traditionally published version. I did not read that. I read this strictly indie, self-published. I don't know if they've made any changes. So if they did make major changes in the traditionally published version, I'm not speaking on that. I'm particularly speaking on the indie self-published version. And that was beautifully written, beautifully done, a very unique world, great simplified world building in a complicated setting. I really liked it. Highly suggest. Maybe a tad long, maybe a tad drawn out, but I was so immersed in the world that it didn't really bother me. So, okay, let's see. What should we go into next? Let's do The Home Run Proposal by Marin Moore. This was cute. It was like a cute, smutty little good time. I mean, not very serious, kind of like a good filler book between more serious reads, but I liked it. I thought it was written decently. I'm putting this in perfectly average. If you were looking for like a spicy sports book, I could recommend that one. The writing was okay. It was a little cringy at times, but I think that that's sometimes part of this type of genre. I don't think it's necessarily always realistic, so it cringes you out at times, but besides for that, it was good. It was average. I would recommend it. Okay. Teach Me the Ropes by Vanessa Vale. Unfortunately, this one is going in the no thank you category from me. This was poorly written. The plot was silly. It had plot holes everywhere to the point where it really did not make sense. It was illogical, and I did not like the main male character. So that was one that I wouldn't recommend, and I actually wish I hadn't read. So no thank you. Funny Story by Emily Henry. Okay, we're just going to go right up to the top of the list because I really cannot see a situation where Emily Henry would be lower than This Was Great. I'm going to go ahead and put this in This Was Great. I don't think I felt the same way when I finished it as I did with Beach Read. Beach Read is still sitting at like a level above Book Lovers and Funny Story, but these were still incredibly close. Funny Story was fantastic. The banter was great. The story was great. I loved the characters. Emily Henry's writing is damn near flawless. So it was definitely going in the it was great category. If you have not read Emily Henry, what are you doing with your life? You should. Okay, let's go with Days of Blood and Starlight. This is the second book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. And like I said when I was discussing the first one was average, and it was at like a top level for me. I still relatively liked the second book, Days of Blood and Starlight, but it didn't knock my socks off. And I think I'm going to put this one in perfectly average as well, but Daughter of Smoke and Bone is on the upper end, and Days of Blood and Starlight is starting to get into like the lower end of average for me. We might as well just go right into the third one while we're talking about it. Dreams of Gods and Monsters is going into meh, wouldn't recommend. I did not love this installment. I thought it was boring, and I didn't love the writing, and I didn't agree with the way that the series finished up and like some of the decisions that the characters made. I thought they kind of like the characters took like a left turn, and it just became like incongruous with the way that they've been written about. I thought the characters changed too much, and it threw me off a little bit. So I didn't really enjoy it, and I found myself like fighting my way through it, to be completely honest with you. So I think Daughter of Smoke and Bone's perfectly average. Days of Blood and Starlight's perfectly average. The third book, Dreams of Gods and Monsters, I think is average, but in the way that I wouldn't recommend it. I think you might be able to read See, but here's the thing. You can't even read Daughter of Smoke and Bone because it ends in a way that doesn't clear up a lot of the plot holes in the story. Like you have to read the other two to figure out what the heck is going on. It's not my favorite series. I think it wasn't, I mean, it's written decently, but it's not conceptualized well. So it wasn't my favorite. We are going into Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares in the next couple of months, and I've heard that these are written in a bit more of a mature way, a bit more adult and less YA, so I'm hoping that I connect more with those characters, but the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series just didn't really do it for me. There was something missing. Lightlark by Alex Astor. This was another Homey and Homely book club book. I think I gave it like a 3.75, so I'm going to put it in perfectly average. I liked it. Really, there's no reason for this other than it was very YA and the characters were all very young. So I think at 36 years old, I kind of was over like the high school drama by the end of it. But besides for that, it was fun. Like it was a fine book. I don't have a problem with it. Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. This is going into This Was Great. I loved this. Once again, similar to the third Gilmore Girl, I did listen to this on audio and Tom Felton narrated it himself. And hearing Draco Malfoy, aka Tom Felton, tell his story in his own words really enhanced the experience for me. I think I still would have loved it if I had just read it physically, but listening to it as well really took it to the next level for me. It was fantastic. It was great. If you are a Harry Potter fan, you should definitely read this. It was amazing. It was very cool because you got his life pre-Harry Potter, during Harry Potter, and then post-Harry Potter, which was very cool. And I've always really liked Tom Felton, and this book just made me like him a lot more. So highly recommend that. It was great. Let's go into Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I'm going to be honest with you, surprisingly, I'm putting this in This Was Great. I do not always love fairy tale retellings, but I've said this in a couple of videos. This is not a fairy tale retelling. Emily McIntyre herself describes this as a fairy tale, a dark fairy tale refractured retelling. So she takes things, she takes the basic concepts, but then she kind of flips them on their head and redoes it in a new and interesting way. So it's not boring. You don't feel like you're reading the same story and you know how it's going to end. Like everyone knows how Peter Pan and Captain Hook's story ends in the traditional version. This she's changed it. It's told in the point of view of Captain Hook. It was well written. It was great. The banter was great. The spice was great. I highly recommend the Never After series. I'm very excited to move on. I liked it so much that Scarred, which is the second book in the series, made its way onto my 25 and 25 list. So I am going to move on in the series and it was great. So that's where it belongs. Let's see. Glint. This is the second book in the Plated Prisoner series. It's going into Nothing Will Beat This. So far, Gild and Glint have been such great high reads for me. Definitely some of my favorite reads of the year. I'm loving this series. So Glint is going to go right along with Gild and Nothing Will Beat These. I'm like noticing a theme on my Nothing Will Beat These. I'm excited to kind of go over it at the end, but I don't think I need to explain it any more than that. I can't say too much because if I explain too much, I'm going to give away things that happen in Gild. Just know the Plated Prisoner series is a gorgeous series. If you have not read Gild, do it. More of Us to the West. I just read this book at the latter half of December. It was an interesting concept. It was a plane crash, kind of like existentialism, like, am I making the right decision in my lives pre-plane crash? The plane crash changed the way she viewed things. They were stranded on an island. There were parts that were pretty monotonous and repetitive, but I think that was on purpose because I think the author was really trying to drill home how they were stranded on this island for like 8 months. I would imagine life would get pretty monotonous. However, it was sometimes just a little bit of a slog to get through, and it was like 700 pages. Do I think that it needed to be 700 pages? No. Do I think that 200 pages could have gotten cut out? Easily. I think some of it was just a bit excessive, was information we didn't need, or were scenes that we didn't need. I'm going to put it in perfectly average, but it's on the higher end. I think I did give this book a 4.25, but can I say like confidently that this book was great? No. Was it on the upper end of perfectly average? Yes. And would I recommend it? Yes. And I am going to move forward in the series. I forget what the second one is called. Something Remnant Tides. I don't know. I'll post a photo on the screen if I remember, but I am going to continue. And by the way, that book doesn't get any shorter. So I think we might have a similar issue on our hands with that one. Okay. The Women by Kristen Hanna. We are going right up to the top of the list. I am putting this in Nothing Will Beat This. This was my first Kristen Hanna. And it was after I read Secret Book of Flora Lee and realized that I think I might like historical fiction more than I originally thought. This book was fantastic. I also had a personal connection because I did have family that fought in the Vietnam War, and I do have an aunt that came over with my uncle after he fought in the Vietnam War, and their love story is so great. So I do have a personal connection to the Vietnam War. My aunt is Vietnamese, and there's like a little bit of a personal history there. I think that might have added to it. But besides for that, Kristen Hanna's writing's gorgeous. The story is great. If you haven't read this, this is a story about the often overlooked women that were a part of the Vietnam War. There was often this like cultural assumption that women were involved in the Vietnam War, and although they weren't on the front lines, they definitely did contribute. And the main female character in this book was a nurse during the Vietnam War, and it's an expose of her time in Vietnam in country and how she contributed to the war and just seeking that acknowledgement, not only while she was in country, but also when she came back. It was excellently done. Kristen Hanna's amazing. I can't wait to read more from her. And the level of research that went into that book was insane. Okay, let's go in with Phantasma. Phantasma was another Homey and Homely Book Club book. Did I like it? Yes. It was a spicy romantasy. I thought the Deadly Trials were cool. I thought sometimes the way that everything just kind of sort of worked out for our main female character was a bit convenient, to the point where like it almost wasn't as exciting, and the Deadly Trials didn't feel like the stakes were super high because she somehow just always seemed to work, like, to get away with things and to make it out unscathed. I'm going to put it in perfectly average. I would recommend it. I thought it was a fun time. I thought it was a good palate cleanser. It's nothing that you really have to use a lot of brain power on. But was it like expertise? Like, was it expertly written? Probably not. But it was good. It was entertaining. Let's see. Gilded by Marissa Myers. It pains me because I think Marissa Myers is a very talented author, but I'm putting this in I wouldn't recommend. This book was slow. This was an example, conversely to Hooked. This was an example of a fairy tale retelling that really didn't reimagine the story in many ways, to the point where, like, if you know the story of Rumpelstiltskin, you kind of know how this is going to work out, and it was a bit boring. So do I think if you came to me and said I want a fairy tale retelling, I would recommend Gilded? I wouldn't. I think there's better out there, so that's going to be in the category that I wouldn't necessarily recommend, unfortunately. However, I do really like Marissa Myers' writing, so it's not a reflection of her writing. Just the story didn't quite work for me. Okay, next let's go into Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This is the second book in the Hunger Games series, and I had never read Hunger Games. I've said this umpteen times, but I was more like the Harry Potter generation. By the time Hunger Games came around, I was a bit older. I was still kind of in the midst of Harry Potter, but I wasn't really reading it. So this is my first time reading the Hunger Games series. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to put this in This Was Great. I'm really, really thoroughly enjoying my Hunger Games experience. I bet it would have been even better if I was younger, like if I was the intended age. I don't think Suzanne Collins necessarily wrote this specifically targeting a 36-year-old demographic, but I really do like it. And this is an example of a YA book that is still kind of timeless in the way that you can enjoy it at any age. My battery's going to die. Hold on one second. Okay, so next up, sorry if the angle's a little different. My battery died. I had to change it out. Okay, what should we go into next? Let's go into Middle of the Night. I read this when I co-hosted the Thrills and Chills book club with the other fabulous ladies of that book club. This is by Riley Sager. It is technically, I think it is categorized as a mystery thriller. Do I think it was super thrilling? Not really. I think it was more of like a paranormal mystery. I wouldn't necessarily say it was super thrilling. And surprisingly, I'm putting this in perfectly average. This is going to be so far the highest of the thrillers I've read, which was a surprise to me because the only other book I had read by Riley Sager was The House Across the Lake, and I actually really actively It's not that I dislike Riley Sager's writing, it's that I highly dislike the endings to his book. I actually was super intrigued by The House Across the Lake. It kept me interested the whole time, and I was interested to the point where I was like, I can't wait to see what happens at the end. And then I got to the end, and the last 10 to 15% of that book was so intensely, mind-numbingly stupid, and it was such a cop-out, and the ending was so dumb that I had kind of sworn him off as a writer, but I'm glad that I gave him a second chance because Middle of the Night was written really well, and I didn't mind the ending as much. Do I think it blew my mind and it was like one of my favorite books of the year? Absolutely, certainly not. However, Middle of the Night was much better than House Across the Lake. So I will say that it was perfectly average. For the right paranormal mystery reader, I would suggest it. It was solid. Night of Cake and Puppets. I kind of forgot about this, to be completely honest with you. This is the little graphic novel novella that we read after Daughter of Smoke and Bone and before Days of Blood and Starlight. And I'm putting this in perfectly average as well. However, if you recall, I had said Daughter of Smoke and Bone was like upper end of average, and Days of Blood and Starlight, the second book, was like lower end of average. This is somewhere like in the middle. I did really enjoy the graphic novel. It was quick, it was easy, it was short. I liked the art style of it. It was my first graphic novel. I don't really read those, so I think that was a really cool experience. And we all of us who read it during the read along really did enjoy it. So yeah, that one was average. I would recommend it. Okay. These two we kind of have to do at the same time. So let's first start with The Scepter. This was the first prequel novella to J. Bree's A Crown of Oaths and Curses. I really liked these. Were they great? Could I really say that an 80-page novella could stand up next to Book Lovers or Beyond the Wand or stuff like that? I probably couldn't. I'm probably going to put these in perfectly average as well, except these are on the higher end of perfectly average as well, like teetering between this is great. I loved it. I can't wait to continue. I think while we're doing this, I'm just going to drop The Sword into that category with it as well. I can't wait to move on in the series. I definitely liked it, and I could see the potential of where the story is going, and that excites me. I'm hoping that in our book, so basically The Scepter followed our main female character, who I'm assuming is going to be the main female character, and The Sword followed the main male character that I'm assuming is going to be the main male character in A Crown of Oaths and Curses, and I did like it. How necessary they are to the book, I won't know until I read it, but Assist as a Villain was another homey and homely book club. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a little corny. I thought it was a little cheesy. I'm going to put it in perfectly average because it was just a cozy fantasy. I will say this. I am going to read the next one, which is Apprentice to the Villain, and if we don't get a little bit more character development and a little bit more relationship development between our characters, I don't know that I will continue moving on, because the buildup and the tension in Assistant to the Villain was done so well that you ended up kind of feeling like unfulfilled at the lack of progress in their relationship. And I'm not saying that I need this to be a romantasy. I understand that not all books need to be romantic. However, she really emphasized making sure that you understood that the main female and main male character were into each other and connected really well, and you felt kind of unsatisfied, I think, by the progression or lack thereof in their relationship. So that's the only thing that was just a little bit irritating to me, but it was average. I would recommend it. The Wedding People by Alison S. Pack. I just read this fairly recently as well. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to put it in This Was Great. I really enjoyed this book. This is definitely literary fiction. Check your triggers, because if you are going through some stuff, there might be some themes in this book that you might not want to read about, but it was excellently written. The character was really funny. The surrounding background characters were also really well developed and very funny, and I liked how each one really had a very specific impact on our main female character. So I highly suggest it. It was really good. For a literary fiction, I was pleasantly surprised. Crash Landing by Annie McQuaid. Okay, so this was an ARC that I received, and this is very similar. This was a plane crashed on a remote island. She's stranded there with her ex-boyfriend. Second chance romance type of vibe. I liked it. It was well done. Similar to More of Us to the West, I felt like some of it was a bit tedious to get through because there is a lot of downtime on this island. I would put this in perfectly average. This is a debut novel. Annie McQuaid, I don't believe, has written any other books. I'm pretty sure this is her debut. And I thought it was a really, really great effort for her debut. Yeah, it was average. It was good, and I would recommend it. Okay, next up we have two books we could do at the same time as well. We have Barbarian Alien and Barbarian Lover, which are books 2 and 3 in the Ice Planet Barbarian series. I think I have talked over and over again about this series and how I am embarrassed at how much I like this series because it is just a ridiculous alien smut good time. I'm not gonna keep going into it. Don't take it too seriously and you will love this series. This is a great series for when you need to numb out and just remember that reading is fun. It's not gonna change your life. It's not gonna make you think deep thoughts. It's just funny. It's just smutty and it's funny. And I highly suggest them. I think they're great and you will not change my mind. Don't take it too seriously. Keep your expectations realistic. Okay, this one I think may be controversial, and I hope if it is your favorite series, because I've heard it is some people's favorite series, that you understand that all readers are different and all tastes are different, because Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir is a no thank you for me. It is one of my least favorite reads of the year. I honestly thought it was absolutely abominably atrocious. I hated this book. I closed it and I went and got the rest of the series off of my shelf and immediately donated them to a little free library. I cannot tell you how confidently I will not be continuing this series. I have no interest. I did not think the writing was good. I actually thought that the dialogue was horrible in this book. It was horribly written. It was full of teenage slang that I just don't want to read about, to the point that it was embarrassing and I don't get it, but that's okay because I don't need to get it. It just wasn't for me. This was a sci-fi dystopian pile of garbage. Sorry. Tell us how you really feel. Okay, Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. I am really quickly beginning to realize that I really love Catherine Center's writing, and this was no different. I really did like this book. Now I'm trying to decide whether I would definitely recommend it, so it's either going to go in perfectly average or this was great. And I'm trying to decide which one it should go in. I think I'm going to put it in perfectly average. It's on the upper end of perfectly average. I don't think it stands up next to some of the other books and this was great. But it was really good. It's closed door, it's sweet, it's cute, but she also does a great job touching on some serious things, so you don't feel like you're wasting time reading it. It was just a really good book. It's a really good story. I really liked learning about the condition our main female character had, which was like a face blindness due to an accident she had. I always mispronounce it wrong. Prosopagnosia, I believe. And at the end of the book, there's an author's note that gives you more information about the condition, which was very cool and educational. So I liked that. It was good. I would recommend it. And I would recommend Catherine Center in general. I read The Bodyguard and I really liked that one too. Okay, next up is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I did like this one. This is going in perfectly average as well. I would recommend it. I liked our main female character. I like our main male character. I like that they both had a limb difference and that's something that they really related to each other on. I thought that that was an interesting part of the book. It just didn't really do anything that'll stick with me long term. Do I think that it was mind-blowingly great? No, but it was a really fun time. It was a really good time. And our main female and male character had really good chemistry, so I liked that. A Fate of Wrath and Flame. This one is a toughie because this was probably one of the most frustratingly repetitive and convoluted, confusing storylines I've ever read. There was so much in this book that could have been cut out. It was needlessly long for what? So much of the stuff that could have been cut out contributed absolutely nothing to the storyline, but there is so much potential in this plot. I will be continuing, but I've said it before. When I read in this vlog, I said I will read the second book, but if I feel as frustrated about this writing style of the second book, I think I'm just going to accept that this writing style is just not for me. It's too silly and long for what? I don't know. I'm probably just gonna not continue the rest of the series. I'm honestly probably gonna put this in meh, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I wouldn't recommend the first book. I didn't think it was that great. However, because I read the first book, now I kind of want to know what happens. That's the only thing that's really driving me into the second book. I could see myself if I feel similarly after book 2, saying I'm kind of all done with this series because the writing style isn't for me. So I don't think I would necessarily go out of my way to recommend it. There's much better fantasy romance. Okay, In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. This was our most recent December Homey and Homely book club. I did like it. Would I recommend it? This is a little bit unfair of me, but I would say I probably wouldn't recommend it. I'm going to put it in meh. It's not that it was bad. I just really am realizing that I don't like the Groundhog Day trope. So if you told me I want like a holiday centered romance, this is not where my brain would automatically go. Now, once again, there's a caveat to this. There's some nuance in this conversation, because if you were to say to me, I want a holiday based romance and I love the Groundhog Day trope, then we might be able to talk about this. However, do I think I would go out of my way to say that this is one of the best, highly recommendable holiday romances I've read? I don't, but I did like Christina Lauren's writing. I did. Okay, Ensnared by Rebecca Quinn. Okay, this book was kind of nonsensical. Dystopian, erotica, reverse harem, wide shoes. I'm going to put it in perfectly average, because I think there would be a situation for the right person and for the right recommendation that I would immediately go to this. I think it does have a very interesting plot line. I think it was well written. I think it did what it was sold to me that it would do. It was a very well marketed book. I don't think she hides or pretends that it's something that it's not. So it's just smut, but it was well done. So I think it was average. I would recommend it. Okay, coming down to the end here, Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I really like this. This is going on the upper end of perfectly average. I would recommend it. I know this first book gets a lot of criticism. I didn't feel that it was long and drawn out like some people do. I actually thought that every chapter was pretty intentional, to be honest with you. And I know that our main female character gets a lot of hate too, and I didn't really mind her. So I would recommend it. If you're looking for like a little YA dystopian fantasy, I think it could be good. There wasn't too much romance in the first book. Maybe that's another reason why it gets some criticism, that it was marketed as a YA romance C. And I don't think the romance part has come in kind of in the first book yet, but I think it does progress as the series goes on. So once again, first book syndrome. If you can get through the first book, I think the rest of the series works out. Somehow my battery is blinking at me again, so I guess I didn't charge it. Okay, let's see if I can get through this before my battery dies. Trial of the Sun Queen. I just read this. I liked it. Perfectly average. Hunger Games meets The Bachelor. It was good. It was well written. I am going to continue on with the series. It didn't blow my mind though. The Ministry of Time. This is another confident no thank you. I actually gave this 2 stars. I felt that this writing was just written in a way that it was trying to be smarter than it was, right? Like, it was just using words that were unnecessary. She loves a simile and a metaphor. They were misplaced to the point where some of them made absolutely no sense. It was a gobbledygook of words that made absolutely no consequence to the story. I talked about it in my last reading vlog. This was also like a fanfic for an actual Arctic 1800s explorer, and it was a little odd. I did not feel the chemistry between the characters at all. I did not buy their love story. And I felt that it was repetitive and silly. So no, that was a no for me. I could go more and more about the pretentiousness of this writing, but it actually really, I disliked it. Okay, and last but not least, we have The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. This was the book that I finished 2024 off with. I'm going to be completely honest with you. In a very cozy, cute, Stars Hollow kind of way, this is going in. This was great for me. I think it was once again another example of right book, right time. This is exactly what I wanted going into the end of the year. Just like a cute, cozy Luke and Lorelai little story, and I really liked it. I liked the banter. I liked the dialogue. I thought the writing was really cute, and I'm so excited to continue on with the series. So I'm going to go ahead and say that it was great. And there you have it, guys. That was the 90 books that I read in the year of 2024. What a fantastic reading year this was. And I'm looking at it, and the fact that like a solid 80-something% of these books, not only did I think were more than average, but I would recommend to you all, that is a solid reading year. I am so thankful that you guys joined me in my journey of reading this year. I cannot say thank you enough. And if you have made it this far, comment the carnival tent emoji for Caraval, and then do all the things that you are so professional at doing, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.